You're welcome back to this particular video. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and like this particular video so that when we upload subsequent video, you don't get to miss out. And feel free to ask a question in the comment section as I'll be going through them. Now let's get started. Let's continue from where we stopped in our previous video. In our previous video, we were able to explain tag and what tag is and how to open and close a tag. So in this particular video, let's take a look at some other new tags, right? So now let's see. So this is what we are going to have here now. I can have H1 tag. So there's a tag called paragraph tag. Let's start by learning paragraph tag. So paragraph tag is denoted with P. So the paragraph tag, we can type this is a paragraph and we can save it. We can come back here. Let's minimize this. We can come back here and actually run this and we're going to say this is a paragraph, right? So let's go back to our code again. So let's type another paragraph again. Paragraph, right, and say this is a second paragraph. So let's save this. So we'll come back again our piece of code again. We're going to say this is a second paragraph. So each paragraph that we create actually starts in the next line. So that is how you actually create a paragraph text inside of HTML. So another thing again I want us to learn inside of HTML, let's delete the second paragraph, is our heading tags. So we have 6 heading tags in HTML that allow us to create heading text instead of HTML. And the first one is the H1. And the H1, we can type something like this. You can say heading 1. So let's duplicate this 6 times. So we have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, heading 6. So let's go ahead and change all of this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go ahead and change this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have our heading 1, heading 2, heading 6. So let's refresh this and see what we get. So we're going to get heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, and heading 6. Now this gives us a total of 6 heading, and you could see heading 1 is the biggest. So this is just a way of actually creating or formatting text inside of HTML, right? So we can have our heading text, we can have our paragraph text. Now we have other amazing tags too that we will also treat, right? So let's see how we can treat some other font tags too, apart from our paragraph headings and our heading tags. So in fact, let me just delete this. So now that we've learned our heading tags and our paragraph tags, I want us to learn what we call the HTML elements, right? So HTML elements, what is an HTML element? So an HTML element is any piece of line or a complete tag instead of our HTML document. So this is what I'm trying to see. So if you have a paragraph tag text like this, or you have a text like this and it's a paragraph, right? This is an HTML element because it has been completed and it has been closed, right? It has been open and closed. So once a tag is open and closed, it can be termed as an HTML element because it is completed. So all of these that we have right here on our screen is actually, they are all HTML elements. So we have nested elements. So nested elements are elements that can carry another element. For example, the body element is carrying the paragraph element, right? Right, and we also have what we call the self-closing elements. Now the self-closing elements are elements that cannot carry other elements. Now I'll give us an example. So let's create a very long paragraph here. So let's say this is a very long paragraph. So once we have this, as this is a very long paragraph, I will go ahead and we'll basically refresh this. So we're going to have this is a very long paragraph. So with this now, we can come over here and type br/. So br is an example of a tag that is an empty element. Now with br tag, you cannot create br tag like this and say br and come over here and type another br and say this is it like this, it is closed. So if we do it like this, you could see that VS Code is even trying to correct me. So if we do it like this is actually wrong, right? This is what? Wrong. It is not correct. So this is the right way to actually do it, right? This is the right way to actually do it, right? So with this now, you could see now that this tag is actually still open and closed, regardless that it is not open and closed the way the paragraph tag is open. So let's see the function of the BR tag. So the BR tag now, anything you type just after the BR tag goes to the next line. And this is different from typing 2 paragraph text, right? Because if this is a 2 paragraph text, for example, let's duplicate this. If it is a 2 paragraph text, for example, you could see that the space between each paragraph is actually bigger than the space between the BRs. Now, BR tag is not the only empty element tag. So we have other empty element tag like the HR tag. So let's see the HR tag. So the HR tag is another HTML element tag that stands for horizontal rule. So once you type the horizontal rule and you come over here and refresh, you're going to see a straight horizontal line that also shows us that this is an empty element tag. So now that we've known empty element tag, I want us to treat something else that is called the HTML attributes. So what exactly are HTML attributes, right? So HTML attributes allow us to add extra characteristics or extra abilities to our HTML tags, right? Now the first attribute or the attribute syntax, how we can add attribute is that an attribute is added at the opening of the tag, where we open the tag, the opening of the tag, and also the syntax of an attribute comes like this: the name of the attribute equal to, in quotes, the value of that particular attribute. So the value here should be the value of this particular name attribute. For example, if the attribute name is called color, the value could also be red, the value could be green, right? The value could be blue, right? So this is how we declare an attribute inside of HTML. And now we have several attributes with several functionalities. Now I'll be showing us our first attribute, that is title. So this is the title attribute. I could put it here and I could just type paragraph inside here and save it. Now if we come back to our browser and refresh, you're not going to see anything, but the moment we just hover here and leave our cursor, our mouse on top of that particular text, we are going to see that whatever thing that we type inside that particular attribute is what that is actually coming up as paragraph there. And you could see paragraph there. This is because I typed paragraph in that particular place. So if I come over here now and I type something else, for example, let me just type simple text so that you know that that paragraph that is coming is not by default. So let's refresh. I'll come over here and hover it now. So you are going to see simple text is actually quite visible there, right? So this is how you declare a very simple paragraph text inside of HTML, right? An attribute inside of HTML. Now that we've learned HTML element and we've learned attributes, let's go ahead and learn something else. So let's learn how to create images. So I'm going to type in my H3 tag here and I'll call this images, right? And let's see how we can add our first image. So now to add image inside of HTML, one of the first thing you want to do is to go to your piece of code and ensure that the image that you want to add is inside the same folder. And this is the folder that we are working on, HTML. So let me just drag this and put it inside of my HTML folder, open this, and even choose to just rename this. And let me just rename this as man. So if I rename it as man, let me go back to my VS Code. And of course, my VS Code, I should be able to sit in that same HTML folder as man here. So the tag that we can use to add image is called the image tag. And the image tag stands like this. It's an empty element tag. It's a self-closing tag, just like the BR tag, and it's denoted with IMG. And the image tag has an attribute, and that attribute is called source, SRC. So SRC is equal to, in quote. Now the value of our source attribute is the file location of our image. For example, now we could say man.jpg. That's our image. So if we save this now, I will go back to our browser and we reload this, we are going to see the image that we've been able to successfully add into our working document, right? And you could see the image is a quite very big image and is making our design a little bit not responsive. So how do we actually make our design responsive with this kind of image, right? So we'll go back to our piece of code right now. I'll add another attribute called width. So we'll put in width here. It's an attribute, and the value of width is always in units, right? In numbers. So we could say 300. So we could save it like this and say 300 and we'll save it. Now, actually, when it comes to sizing, we have two major units that we use in HTML. Now, there are more than two units anyways, but there are two major units that developers always use. The first one is the px. It could be in px or it could also be in percentage. For example, now if I say 100% and save it, this image is going to carry the full width of my device. If I say 50%, it's going to, of course, carry half of my device, which is the 50% of the width of my device. If I say 25%, it's going to do the same thing too as well. Why px is actually quite different from percent. So you could say ps stands for pixels. So this is going to occupy 500 pixels of this particular device. So that is the difference, right? I just want us to actually know the difference between this and that other one too as well. So now that we know the difference between the sizing between percentage and px, so let's just continue. We can also attach height to this particular image too. So that is how we could add image and making use of attributes inside of our document. Now let's type another H3 and let's call this forms. So let's treat a little bit of forms inside of HTML, right? So in HTML now, let's treat forms. So there's a tag called form. If you want to create a form in HTML, of course, we almost have filled the form online before. Probably when you're registering for a website or something of that nature, you once filled the form. Let's go ahead and create our first form. But the first thing you want to do when creating a form in HTML is to wrap all your form elements inside the form tag called form, right? So we have different kind of form input. So, and that tag is called what? Input. And that input tag is an empty element tag. But before we do that, let's create our paragraph tag and let's create our label, right? Inside this, let's call this our label, and let's just delete this particular for, and the name of this particular label, let's call it username, for example. Let's assume I want to create a form for sign up, right? Username, and let's come over here and I'll create our input tag. So our input tag, of course, is an empty element tag that can be denoted like this, and the type, of course, can be text. And if we save this now, we'll come back here and we'll refresh. We should be able to see our form right here, right? So our username and everything is just right here. So let me save this and refresh, and we'll be able to see our form right here, and everything is working like perfectly fine. And everything is working like perfectly fine for us, and we have our form right there. So apart from this, again, this type can also change to become several other things, right? So let's just copy all of this paragraph elements and paste it here. Instead of username, let's call this password. So if it is password, we are going to change this particular type to what? Password. So if we change this particular type to password, we are going to see our password here. And when we start typing, it will not give us this particular password field, right? So another thing again, the other attribute we could add to our form is the placeholder attribute, right? So this particular placeholder attribute allows us to add some little information inside our placeholder attribute. So instead of this, we could type e.g. John, and password here, we'll say enter password. We'll type enter password. Let's say enter password, right? Or let us, instead of type John, let's type enter username, right? So keep it like this. And once we save now, we can now see this placeholder text called enter username, enter password, in such a way that once we start typing, it basically disappears, right? And it allows us to type. Now, another thing we could do again, we could also create buttons. So for us to create buttons, we make use of the button tag. So there's a button tag like this, open and close button tag, and within it we can type login, right? And type, we could say type of this, let it be what? Submit. So once we say type is submit, it will allow us to submit this particular form, right? So we'll save it right now, and we're going to see this. And the moment we click this right now, you could see this particular page is loading and it is attempting to submit it in such a way that if I type my name here and say Samuel and times of password here, let me just type H all the way down, and I click on this, it will see this particular question mark right here. If we even want to retrieve the data of that particular form, we can go ahead and give this a name attribute and call this particular name attribute username, right? And also call this particular name attribute, let's call it what? Password too as well, right? And let's go and try and submit this again. Type something, just type some gibberish and submit it here, right? Let's refresh, type some gibberish, and submit it here. You're going to see that right here now, you're going to say username, the gibberish I just type, the password, and the gibberish I just type, because it is trying to submit this particular form. So if I come over and type Samuel and type 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 as my password and I save it, you're going to see username is equal to Samuel and password is equal to 1 2 3 7, right? So that's one fun way to actually work with form. There are so many other things we could also do with our input tag. That is not just username and this, and there is other form elements too as well. For example, we could also create our drop down. In fact, let's create our drop down. Let's create another, let's select all of this. Let me show you another form element again that we could create. We'll create another form element like this, and we could do this too. And let's call this one courses. Let's call this one courses, right? And this other one now, we will not create it using input, we'll create it using select. So there's a form element called select, and select allows us to select like multiple stuff, right? So we could come over here and click on option like this, and our first option, let's just leave the value for now. Our first option could be HTML. Let's just type HTML there. Our second option could be CSS. Our third option, if we duplicate this, would be JavaScript, right? So let's just say JavaScript like this. So once we come over here and we refresh it and save it, we'll be able to have different courses that we could actually select right here, right? So we have other forms too as well, other input element that is not just select. We could also have like gender, for example. If I copy all of this and I place it here and I say let's select gender, and for example, let's say gender, we could go ahead and create input element like this, input element, and say let the type be radio, and I will give it a name and say let the name be gender. So I'm not spelling it well. Let's say gender like this, gender. All right. So we'll just put it in front of it. Let's call this one male. Duplicate this line 3 times. Let's call this other one female. And let us say this one is others, right? And save it like this. So once we come back now and refresh it, we're going to have our gender. We see male, you see female, and you see others, right? So this allows us to actually create gender. And note that all of the name attribute has the same value of gender, 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 gender again. So not just this as well, we can also create our checkbox. So there's another input element as well. The type is called checkbox. Checkbox. So this allows us to create checkbox, right? Let's say physical. How do you want to learn? Let's just type physical here. Probably people that want physical class and people that want online class. Let us put it here, for example. So this will allow us to create another kind of form that comes like this as what checkbox, right? So these are several things that we could also create using actually different form tags, right? So now in this particular video, we have been able to learn more about HTML and some other font tags too as well. We have been able to learn paragraph, headings, image, HTML elements, and some several other form tags. So thank you for watching this particular video, and don't forget that Neddy I have an online bootcamp course that lasts for 8 weeks, and in that particular 8-week course you're going to have mentorship, support group to ask questions, you're going to have accountability partners, and as well as access to internship, access to job opportunities, and internship opportunities will be sent to your way so you can be applying for those opportunities, right? Thank you for watching this particular video. See you in the next part, and don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube channel not to miss out in the subsequent uploads.